Every night, something begins in the brain that science has not yet fully explained. A quiet transformation unfolding in the dark in every sleeping mind on Earth. Welcome to the Sleepy Lab. Tonight, we drift through the science of dreams, through the stages of sleep, the discovery of REM, and the strange, half-lit territory where the brain becomes most alive precisely when the body goes still. If this is the kind of journey you'd like to take every night, consider subscribing, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. Right now, as your body settles and your breathing slows, your brain is preparing to do something remarkable. Something it has done every night of your life, and something that neuroscience, for all its precision and patience, still cannot fully explain. Sleep is not simply the absence of waking. It is not a single state, a uniform darkness that descends and lifts. It is a cycle, a carefully choreographed sequence of distinct phases, each with its own biology, its own chemistry, its own quiet purpose. And that cycle repeats. Roughly every 90 minutes, the brain moves through its full arc, from the shallows of light, sleep down into the depths, and back again. 4 to 6 times each night, if sleep is uninterrupted. 4 to 6 complete journeys, each one slightly different from the last. There are 2 broad territories in this landscape. The first is non-REM sleep, and within it, 3 stages that descend like steps into still water. The first stage is the threshold, light, easily broken, the place where the world begins to soften at its edges. The second stage deepens. And the third, slow-wave sleep, is the deepest of all. In slow-wave sleep, the brain shifts into a different rhythm entirely. Large, slow, synchronized waves move across the cortex, delta waves, rolling like long swells across a quiet sea. The body is heavy. The mind is somewhere far from language. And yet the brain is not idle. During slow-wave sleep, it is doing something essential, replaying the day's experiences, quietly, in compressed sequences, transferring them from fragile short-term storage into the deeper architecture of long-term memory. Everything you learned today, everything you noticed, everything that mattered even slightly, the brain is sorting it now, deciding what to keep, deciding where it belongs. The second territory is REM sleep. Rapid eye movement, sleep. And its discovery, when it came, changed everything. In 1953, a researcher named Nathaniel Kleitman and his graduate student Eugene A. Sarinsky were studying sleep in a laboratory at the University of Chicago. Sarinsky was watching sleeping infants, and he noticed something unexpected. Beneath their closed eyelids, their eyes were moving. Quickly, purposefully, darting back and forth as though following something only they could see. He suspected, quietly, that this movement was connected to dreaming. And he was right. The discovery of REM sleep was one of the most significant moments in the history of sleep research, a door opening onto a room that no one had known was there. What happens inside that room is still, in some ways, difficult to believe. During REM sleep, the brain's electrical activity does not look like sleep at all. It looks like waking. The patterns of neural firing, the rhythms, the frequencies, and the regions lighting up closely resemble those of a fully alert, fully conscious mind. The visual cortex becomes active. The limbic system, the brain's emotional core, stirs and brightens. The memory centers engage. All of this while the body lies still and the eyes are closed and the room is dark. The brain is, in some meaningful sense, awake, but turned inward, running on its own. And yet not every part of the brain participates equally. One region grows quieter during REM sleep, even as the others surge. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, for planning, for the steady voice that says this doesn't make sense, dims. It does not go dark entirely, but its influence recedes. And this partial withdrawal of the part of us that questions and evaluates and doubts may be why dreams feel the way they do. Real, completely, unquestionably real, even when they are impossible. A house that is also a forest. A conversation with someone who is gone. A sky the wrong color, and no part of the dreaming mind finding anything strange about it. The prefrontal cortex, if it were fully present, might raise a hand and say, "Wait." But it is quiet now. And so the dream continues, unquestioned, vivid, entire, a world assembled from within, with no external anchor, no shared reality, no ground beneath it. Only the experience itself, which, for the duration of the dream, is enough. The rapid eye movements that Aserinsky noticed in those sleeping infants, they are still not completely understood. But one possibility, supported by careful study, is that the dreaming brain is tracking visual scenes as they unfold, that the eyes are following something. Moving through a landscape, watching a face, turning toward a sound. Studies have found that the direction of eye movement during REM sleep corresponds, at least sometimes, to the direction of gaze within the dream itself. The eyes, sealed behind their lids, moving through a world that exists only in the mind that is generating it. There is something worth holding gently here as you drift. The experience you are moving toward tonight, the one that will begin, perhaps, within the next hour, is not yet fully understood by the people who have spent their lives studying it. The brain that is carrying you toward sleep right now is the same brain that will, in its own time, begin to dream. And what that means, why it generates experience at all, why it builds worlds from nothing, why those worlds feel inhabited and real, remains one of the genuinely open questions of science. Not a mystery waiting to be solved next year, but a deep one. The kind that sits at the edge of what we know and looks out into something larger. For now, the delta waves are coming. The slow, wide rhythms of deep sleep, moving through the brain like weather. The day is being sorted and stored. The body is growing heavier. And somewhere ahead, in the later hours of the night, the first REM period is waiting, brief at first, then longer still. The brain will brighten. The eyes will move. And whatever happens next, whatever world assembles itself in the quiet of your sleeping mind, it will feel, for a time, completely real. Let it. As you rest here, the brainstem is already preparing something quiet and precise. A set of signals moving downward through the nervous system, reaching the motor neurons, the cells that tell your muscles to move. And gently, one by one, those signals say, "Not yet." This is muscle atonia, a temporary, deliberate stillness that the brain imposes on the body each time it enters REM sleep. Not paralysis in any frightening sense, more like a careful uncoupling, the dreaming mind set free to move through its own world, while the body remains here, still, safe, held in place. The reason for this is straightforward, in its way. Without it, the body would follow the dream. A person running in a dream might run in their bed. A person reaching for something might reach. The brainstem, in its quiet wisdom, prevents this, sending inhibitory signals that hold the muscles in a kind of suspension for the duration of REM. In most people, this mechanism works without fail, night after night, across an entire lifetime. But in rare cases, it does not. There is a condition called REM sleep behavior disorder, in which the atonia fails, partially or entirely. People with this condition may shout during sleep or kick, or in some cases leap from the bed entirely, acting out the physical movements of a dream they cannot yet know they are having. It is, in its way, a window, because it reveals something that is otherwise invisible, that the dreaming brain is generating real, coordinated movement, not random twitching. purposeful motion. The body, freed from its usual restraint, follows the dream's logic as faithfully as it would follow a waking intention. The dream, it turns out, is more physical than it appears. And then there are the eyes. Even when the rest of the body is still, the eyes move, rapidly, in bursts, tracking something, or seeming to. This is what Aserinsky noticed in those sleeping infants, all those decades ago. And researchers have since looked more carefully at what those movements mean. The evidence suggests that the eyes, during REM sleep, are following the dream. Studies in which dreamers were woken immediately after periods of eye movement found that the direction of gaze within the dream corresponded to the direction the eyes had just moved. A dreamer who had been looking upward in the dream had eyes that moved upward. One looking to the left had eyes that drifted left. The dreaming brain, it seems, is not merely generating images. It is watching them, moving through a visual world with the same tracking behavior it uses in waking life, even though the eyes are closed, even though there is nothing there to see. This is worth sitting with for a moment. The eyes moving behind closed lids, following a scene that exists nowhere but inside the mind. Dreaming occurs most fully during REM, but not only then. Even in the quieter stages of non-REM sleep, something dreamlike can occur. These non-REM dreams tend to be different in character, less vivid, less emotional, more like thoughts than scenes, fragments of reasoning, half-formed images, the texture of a concern rather than a story. They are the shallow end of the dreaming mind. The deeper end comes later, in the long REM periods of the early morning, when the brain has had time to cycle through its stages and return, again and again, to that brightened, active state. Across a full night, the average person spends roughly 2 hours in active dreaming. 2 hours, every night, in a world the brain builds entirely from within. Over the course of a lifetime, that accumulates to something close to 6 years. 6 years spent inside experiences that leave almost no trace, that dissolve. Most mornings, before the first clear thought of the day. 6 years of color and motion and feeling and narrative, most of it quietly forgotten. And it is, for most people, color. The majority of dreamers report dreaming in full color, the same palette available to waking vision, sometimes richer, sometimes stranger, but color nonetheless. A smaller number report something different. They dream consistently in black and white, and researchers, looking for what distinguishes these dreamers, found something unexpected. People who grew up watching black and white television, those who spent their early years with a monochrome visual world as a significant part of their experience, are more likely to report monochrome dreams, even now, decades later. The effect is generational. It fades in people who grew up with color television as the norm. What this suggests is something quiet and a little remarkable. The visual experience of early life, the particular palette of the world as it appeared in childhood, can shape the dreaming mind for decades. The brain, learning what the visual world looks like during those early years, carries that template forward into sleep, into the images it generates in the dark. The dreaming mind is not inventing from nothing. It is drawing on everything it has ever seen. And for those who have never seen at all, or who lost sight very early, the dreaming mind draws on something else entirely. People who lost their sight before the age of about 5 rarely experience visual imagery in their dreams. The visual cortex, which in sighted people becomes so active during REM, did not receive the early input it needed to build those templates. The dreaming mind, in these cases, does not reach for images, because images were never fully established as a language. But the dreams are not empty. They are full of sound, of touch, of the felt sense of space and presence, of emotion, of narrative, of the same richness that characterizes dreaming in anyone, just rendered in a different sensory register, the one the brain knows best. This is one of the quieter findings in dream research, that the content of dreams is not fixed or universal, but shaped by experience, by history, by the particular way each brain learned to represent the world during the years when it was most open to learning. Your dreaming mind, when it comes to night, will draw on your world. The colors you have seen, the faces you know, the textures of places you have moved through. It will recombine them in ways you did not choose and cannot predict. And it will feel, while it is happening, like somewhere real. The brainstem holding the body still, the eyes moving softly behind closed lids. 2 hours, give or take, of a world assembled from within. Let the stillness settle now. The body is already quieting, the muscles releasing, one by one, into the gentle suspension that REM will bring. The eyes, for now, are still. But later, in the deep hours, when the cycles have turned and the brain has brightened again, they will begin to move, following something. Something that is already, in some quiet way, beginning to form. And if you lost your sight after the age of 7, the visual world tends to stay. Dreams, for those who became blind in later childhood or adulthood, often remain visual, sometimes for the rest of their lives. The brain, having learned to see, does not easily forget the habit. Those early years of visual experience leave something behind, a kind of template, and the dreaming mind returns to it, night after night, long after the eyes have stopped receiving light. For those who were born blind, or who lost their sight in the very earliest years, the dream world is built differently, not darker, just differently shaped, rich with sound, the particular texture of a voice, the way footsteps change on different surfaces, the warmth of a room sensed through the skin, touch and smell, and the felt quality of emotion. These become the materials from which the dreaming mind constructs its world. And by all accounts, that world is no less vivid, no less real in the feeling of it, simply assembled from different things. This is worth resting with for a moment. The dreaming mind works with what it has been given. It draws on the particular history of the brain that contains it. And so, no two people's dreams are built from quite the same materials. What shapes the content of a dream, as far as research can tell, is a combination of waking experience, emotion, and recent memory. The day leaves traces, small ones, often. A face glimpsed in passing, a conversation that lingered, a moment of mild frustration or unexpected warmth. These fragments surface in the night, rearranged, embedded in scenes that may bear little resemblance to where they came from. Researchers call this the day residue effect. The previous day's experiences have a particular tendency to appear in that night's dreams, not replayed exactly, more like echoes, pieces of the day drifting up through the hours of sleep, finding their way into whatever the brain is quietly assembling. But the brain does not simply replay what happened. That is one of the more important things to understand about dreaming. Memory is not a recording, and the dreaming mind is not a playback device. It recombines. It takes fragments from different times, different places, different emotional registers, and it weaves them together into something new. A face from childhood in a room you have never been in. A feeling that belongs to one relationship, attached to a different person entirely. The logic of it is not waking logic, but it has its own coherence. This recombination may not be accidental. Some researchers believe it serves a function, that the dreaming mind, by connecting things that were never connected before, is doing something genuinely creative, finding relationships between ideas that the waking mind, with its more linear habits, might not have reached. There are accounts, some well-known, some harder to verify, of people waking from sleep with solutions to problems that had resisted them for days. Scientists, mathematicians, writers, composers, people who had worked at something until they could work no further, and then slept and found something waiting for them in the morning. The chemist Auguste Kekule described dreaming of a snake curling around to swallow its own tail, and waking with the insight that the carbon atoms of benzene might be arranged not in a chain, but in a ring, a closed loop. The structure that turned out to be correct. Whether the dream happened exactly as he described it, no one can say with certainty. Memory is imperfect, and stories about dreams are especially so. But the broader pattern of insight arriving after sleep, of problems resolving overnight, is not merely anecdotal. It has been studied. Sleep has been shown, in controlled experiments, to improve performance on creative problem-solving tasks, not just compared to no rest at all, but compared to equivalent periods of quiet waking rest. Something about sleep specifically, about what the brain does during sleep, appears to support the kind of thinking that finds new connections. The hippocampus is part of the reason. This small, curved structure, tucked deep in the temporal lobe, is central to the formation of new memories. It is highly active during sleep, during both slow-wave sleep and REM. And what it does during those hours is something researchers have been able to observe, at least in part. During slow-wave sleep, the deep, quiet stages that dominate the early part of the night, the hippocampus replays the neural firing patterns of the day, not in real time, in compressed, rapid sequences. A day's worth of experience, rehearsed in a fraction of the time it originally took to live. This replay is thought to be part of how memories are transferred. The hippocampus holds information in a kind of short-term store, capable but limited. During sleep, it appears to pass that information along to the cortex, to the broader, more distributed networks where long-term memories are kept, consolidating what was learned, deciding, in some sense, what is worth keeping. And then REM sleep does something further. Where slow-wave sleep seems to transfer and stabilize memories, REM may be where they are integrated, woven into the larger fabric of what the brain already knows, given context, given meaning, connected to older knowledge in ways that were not yet apparent when the experience first occurred. This is a two-stage process. As researchers currently understand it, slow-wave sleep lays the groundwork. REM sleep finds the connections. And it is during that second stage, during the long, vivid REM periods of the later night, that the dreaming mind is most active, most combinatorial, most likely to place the face of someone you knew 20 years ago into a scene from yesterday, most likely to find, in the strange grammar of dreams, something that waking thought had not yet reached. The brain, in those hours, is not resting. It is working, quietly, without your direction, without your awareness, sorting and connecting, and occasionally, perhaps, arriving somewhere new. You do not need to do anything with this. The process does not require your attention or your effort. It is already underway, has been underway every night of your life, whether you remembered the dreams or not, whether the night felt restful or fitful, whether you woke with a clear sense of having dreamed or with nothing at all. The hippocampus, even now, is beginning its quiet work. The day's residue is already settling. The fragments are already there, waiting to be recombined into whatever the night will make of them. And somewhere in that process, in the slow transfer of memory, in the integration of old and new, in the strange creative logic of the dreaming mind, something may be resolved that you did not know needed resolving. Some small knot, loosened, some connection, quietly made. Let the day go now. It has already been received. The brain has what it needs, and the work of the night, the real work, the invisible work, is just beginning. There are two stages to this nightly work, and they are not interchangeable. The first, slow-wave sleep, deep and still, handles one kind of memory. The second, REM, with its flickering eyes and its dreaming, handles another. Disrupt the first, and certain things are harder to learn the next day. Disrupt the second, and different things suffer. The brain is not simply backing up a single file. It is running two separate processes, each with its own purpose, each protecting something the other cannot. Procedural memories, the kind held in the body as much as the mind, depend heavily on sleep. How to ride a bicycle, how to find a chord on a string, how to move through a sequence that once required conscious effort, and now, after enough practice and enough sleep, simply flows. These skills consolidate overnight. A person who learns a new motor sequence and then sleeps will perform it more smoothly the following morning than they could the night before. Not because they practiced in their sleep, exactly, but because the sleeping brain quietly rehearsed the pattern, refined it, embedded it more deeply into the networks that carry it. This is not metaphor, it is measurable. And alongside procedural memory, something else is being tended to. Emotional memory. The experiences that carried weight, the conversation that unsettled you, the moment of unexpected kindness, the thing that happened that you have not yet fully processed. These are also being worked on during sleep, particularly during REM. The emotional texture of a memory, not just its content, is consolidated in the night, which is part of why a difficult day can feel subtly different by morning, not erased, but changed in quality, slightly less sharp at the edges. The amygdala is at the center of this. It is the brain's primary threat detection center, a small, almond-shaped structure that responds to danger, to fear, to anything that carries emotional significance. During waking life, it is alert and reactive. During REM sleep, it becomes, if anything, more active, unusually so. More active than in ordinary waking, more active than in any other stage of sleep. This is part of why dreams carry such emotional weight. The amygdala is not resting during REM, it is engaged, and the emotions it generates, fear, anxiety, sadness, the particular unease of a dream that feels threatening without being clearly dangerous, these are among the most commonly reported feelings in dream content. Positive emotions do occur. Warmth, connection, something like joy. But negative emotions appear somewhat more frequently. The dreaming mind tilts, on balance, toward the difficult. This may not be a flaw. One hypothesis, and it is a hypothesis, held with appropriate uncertainty, is that REM sleep allows the brain to revisit difficult emotional experiences in a kind of protected space. A low-stakes environment, as some researchers describe it. The emotional memory is reactivated. The feeling is present, in some form. But the body is not in danger. The situation is not real. And crucially, the chemical signature of stress is suppressed. Norepinephrine, a stress hormone that in waking life accompanies fear and threat, is quieted during REM sleep, almost entirely absent. And yet the emotional content of the memory is still there, still being processed. The brain is holding the feeling without the flood of chemistry that makes it overwhelming. This combination is thought to be significant. Emotional reactivation without the stress response. The memory, revisited in calmer neurochemical conditions, may gradually lose some of its charge. The same event, processed again and again across multiple nights of REM sleep, may become something the mind can hold more easily, not forgotten, not diminished in importance, but diffused in some quiet way. The sleep researcher Matthew Walker has described this process as a form of overnight therapy. It is a careful phrase, not a cure, not a guarantee, but a nightly opportunity for the emotional brain to do something that waking life, with all its urgency and its chemistry, makes harder to do. And the evidence for this is not only theoretical. People who sleep poorly in the days and weeks following a traumatic event show higher rates of post-traumatic stress symptoms than those who sleep well. The disruption of REM sleep, the stage in which this emotional processing is thought to occur, appears to interfere with the brain's ability to work through what happened. The memory remains raw. The stress response remains attached to it. The diffusing does not take place. There is a strange counterpoint to this. Certain medications that suppress REM sleep have been associated, in some people with post-traumatic stress disorder, with a reduction in nightmare frequency, which seems to contradict the idea that REM sleep is protective. If REM is where healing happens, why would suppressing it help? The answer, as far as researchers can tell, is that the relationship is more complicated than any single theory can hold. REM sleep may be where emotional processing occurs, but it may also be where, in some cases, the trauma is being repeatedly reactivated without resolution. The same mechanism that allows healing may, under certain conditions, perpetuate distress, the brain returning again and again to something it cannot yet diffuse. This is an active area of research, contested, unresolved, genuinely uncertain. The science here is not settled, and it would be wrong to suggest otherwise. What is clearer is the broader picture, that the sleeping brain is not neutral toward emotion, that it is doing something with the feelings of the day, that the amygdala's unusual activity during REM is not incidental but purposeful, in some sense that researchers are still working to understand, and that the dreams themselves, strange, vivid, emotionally charged, may be the surface of this process, the visible part of something happening at a deeper level, the story the brain tells while it works. Fear in a dream is not the same as fear in waking life. The body is still, the stress hormones are quiet, and yet the feeling is present, real in its own way, being held and perhaps slowly transformed by the dreaming mind. Sadness in a dream moves differently than waking sadness. It has a quality of distance, even when it is intense, as though the mind is observing its own feeling from somewhere slightly removed. This may be the point. The distance that dreaming creates, the unreality of the dream world, the suppression of the chemicals that make emotion overwhelming, may be precisely what allows the emotional brain to do its work, to approach what is difficult without being consumed by it. You do not need to direct this process. It does not require your intention or your understanding. The amygdala will do what it does. The norepinephrine will quiet. The memories that need tending will be tended to, in whatever way the sleeping brain tends to things. Whatever you are carrying tonight, whatever the day left behind, it is already in the hands of a process older than language, older than understanding. The night knows what to do with it. And somewhere in the hours ahead, in the long REM periods of the early morning, in the dreams you may or may not remember, something is being worked on. Quietly. Without effort. Without your help. And yet, not everything the sleeping brain does with emotion is gentle. There are nights when the process goes differently. The relationship between REM sleep, trauma, and emotional healing is real, but it is not simple. Researchers are still working to understand it, and the honest answer is that much remains contested. What is clear is that the system does not always succeed. Sometimes the dreaming mind returns to the same difficult place, again and again, without resolution. This is what a nightmare is. Not merely an unpleasant dream. A nightmare is a dream disturbing enough to wake the sleeper, to pull the mind back across the threshold into wakefulness, carrying with it a residue of fear or grief or dread that can linger long after the images have faded. Nightmares are not rare. Roughly 4% of adults experience them chronically, frequently enough to disrupt sleep, frequently enough to cause distress in waking life. They're more common in people who carry anxiety, which is perhaps not surprising. The same mind that worries during the day may find that worry following it into the night. And there is something worth knowing about when nightmares tend to arrive. They do not come early, they come late. The REM periods of early sleep are brief, perhaps 10 or 15 minutes. But as the night progresses, each REM cycle grows longer. By the final cycle, in the hours just before dawn, a single REM period can last close to an hour. The dreaming brain has been warming up all night, and by morning it is running at full depth. This is why the most vivid dreams, and the most difficult ones, tend to arrive in the early hours. The long, immersive REM of late sleep is where the emotional intensity is highest, where the dream world feels most real, where the mind is most deeply inside whatever it is constructing. If you have ever woken at 4 or 5 in the morning from a dream that felt overwhelming, that is why the architecture of sleep itself places the most powerful dreaming at the end. For most people, nightmares are occasional. unwelcome, but passing. But for some, they recur. The same scenario, or variations of it, returning night after night. The same threat, the same loss, the same impossible situation. This is recognized now as a clinical condition, nightmare disorder, and it can be treated. One of the more quietly remarkable treatments is called imagery rehearsal therapy. It works like this. During waking hours, the person recalls the recurring nightmare, not to relive it, but to rewrite it. They change the ending. They alter a detail, shift the direction of the story, introduce something that was not there before. And then they rehearse this new version. They hold it in mind, return to it, make it familiar. The idea is that the dreaming brain, which is highly responsive to recent mental content, will begin to incorporate the new version. The rewritten ending becomes available to the sleeping mind as an alternative path. In controlled trials, this technique has shown meaningful reductions in nightmare frequency. It does not work for everyone, and researchers are still refining their understanding of why it works when it does. But the principle is striking, that a waking act of imagination can reach back into the dreaming mind and quietly change what happens there. The boundary between waking thought and dreaming is more permeable than it might seem. And then there is sleep paralysis. It is one of the stranger experiences the sleeping brain can produce, and it is more common than most people realize. Sleep paralysis occurs at the edge of REM sleep, at the moment when the mind begins to return to wakefulness, but the body has not yet followed. The muscle atonia of REM sleep, the deep stillness that holds the body in place during dreaming, persists for a few seconds or a few minutes beyond the point when consciousness has returned. The sleeper is awake, aware of the room, aware of the ceiling or the pillow or the quality of the light, but unable to move, unable to speak. The signals from the brain reach the muscles and find no response. It passes, almost always within a minute or two, sometimes in seconds, but in the moment, it can feel much longer. About 8% of people will experience this at least once in their lives. For most, it is a single strange episode, unsettling but harmless. For some, it recurs. What makes sleep paralysis particularly vivid is what can accompany it. The brain, still partially in REM, may continue generating the hallucinations of dreaming even as the conscious mind looks out at the real room. These are not quite dreams. They are intrusions of dreamlike imagery into waking perception, a presence sensed in the corner of the room, a weight on the chest, heavy and inexplicable, a shadow at the edge of vision that does not belong there. These hallucinations are real experiences, in the sense that the brain is genuinely producing them. They are not imagined in the ordinary sense. They arise from the same neural machinery that generates the full world of a dream, now running in partial overlap with waking awareness. And they have been reported in remarkably consistent form across centuries and across cultures that had no contact with one another. The old hag of Newfoundland folklore, a figure that sits on the chest of the sleeper and steals their breath. The Kanashibari of Japan, a state of being bound, unable to move, in the presence of something unseen. The mare of European tradition, from which the word nightmare itself derives, a spirit that rides the sleeping body through the night. Different names, different stories built around the same experience, the same paralysis, the same pressure, the same sense of a presence. What this convergence suggests is that sleep paralysis is not a modern phenomenon, not a product of any particular culture or belief system. It is a feature of the human brain, appearing wherever humans sleep. The stories that grew up around it were attempts to explain something real, something the body was genuinely experiencing before the neuroscience existed to describe it. Now the neuroscience exists, and the explanation is, in its own way, just as strange as the folklore. The dreaming brain, briefly overlapping with the waking mind. The body held still by a mechanism designed to protect the sleeper. The visual and emotional systems still running, still generating, still reaching toward experience, even as consciousness returns. Sleep paralysis is harmless. It is not a sign of illness, not a sign of damage. It is more likely when sleep is disrupted or irregular, more likely under stress, more likely when sleeping on the back, though why that last detail matters is not fully understood. If it happens, if it has happened, or if it happens again, the knowledge of what it is may be enough to soften it. The paralysis will end. The hallucination will dissolve. The body will return. It is only the sleeping brain doing what the sleeping brain does, constructing experience from within, at the edge of waking, in the quiet hours before dawn. There are two kinds of hallucinations that can accompany the edges of sleep. The first arrives at the threshold of falling asleep, a voice, a face, a sudden vivid scene that appears just as wakefulness begins to loosen its hold. These are called hypnagogic hallucinations. The second kind arrives at the other edge, at the moment of returning to wakefulness, when the dreaming brain has not yet fully released its hold on experience. These are called hypnopompic hallucinations. Both are normal. Both are simply the brain in transition, neither fully asleep nor fully awake, still generating imagery, still constructing experience, caught briefly between two states. When sleep paralysis and these hallucinations occur together, the experience can be vivid in a way that is difficult to describe afterward. A sense of a presence somewhere in the room, a weight settling onto the chest, a figure at the edge of vision, dark and still, the body unable to move, the mind unable to dismiss what it perceives. These are not signs of illness. They are the dreaming brain, briefly visible from the waking side. And they have been experienced by people across every culture, across every century, for as long as records exist. The accounts are remarkably consistent. In Newfoundland, there is a figure called the Old Hag, a creature said to sit upon the chest of sleepers, pressing the breath from them, holding them pinned and helpless in the dark. In Japan, the same experience is called kanashibari, a word that translates roughly as bound in metal, frozen, unable to move. In the folklore of medieval Europe, the mare was a spirit that rode sleeping people through the night, leaving them exhausted and terrified by morning. The word nightmare carries that old belief inside it still. These traditions arose in places with no contact with one another. Different languages, different cosmologies, different centuries. And yet the experience they describe is the same. The paralysis, the presence, the weight, the fear. The most straightforward explanation is that they were all describing the same neurological event. The same brainstem mechanism, the same REM atonia persisting past its proper boundary, the same partially dreaming mind generating figures in the dark, experienced by human beings everywhere, and explained, in the absence of neuroscience, by the stories that cultures reach for when something real and strange needs a name. The universality of these accounts is, in its quiet way, a kind of evidence, not of demons or spirits, but of a shared biology, a shared nervous system doing the same thing in the same way in every corner of the world, across all of recorded human time. And now the science exists to describe what the folklore was reaching toward. The paralysis is the brainstem, protecting the body from acting out its dreams. The presence, the weight, the figures, these are the dreaming mind, still running, still generating, briefly overlapping with the consciousness that has returned to wakefulness before the dream machinery has finished its work. It passes. It always passes. And then there is something else that can happen at the edges of sleep, something quieter, and in its own way, more remarkable. There is a state in which a person becomes aware, within a dream, that they are dreaming. Not waking up, not leaving the dream, but recognizing it from inside as a dream. The world of the dream continues, its colors, its spaces, its strange internal logic. But a part of the mind steps back and observes. This is a dream. I am dreaming this. This is called lucid dreaming. The word lucid here means clear, a moment of clarity within the dream state, a light coming on in a room that was previously dark. The term was given its name by a Dutch psychiatrist named Frederik van Eden. In 1913, Van Eden was a careful observer of his own inner life, and he kept a dream journal over many years with unusual discipline and precision. He recorded more than 350 lucid dreams in meticulous detail, their settings, their qualities, the degree of awareness he experienced within them, the ways in which he could and could not influence what happened. He was not the first person to notice the phenomenon. Aristotle wrote about becoming aware within a dream that one was dreaming. Tibetan Buddhist practice had described something similar for centuries under the name dream yoga, a deliberate cultivation of awareness within the sleeping mind. But Van Eden gave the experience a name that stuck, and his careful records helped establish it as something worth taking seriously. For a long time, it was not taken seriously enough. The scientific community, reasonably enough, was skeptical. A person claiming to be conscious within a dream, aware of their own dreaming, how could that be verified from outside? How could anyone know whether the report was accurate or simply a story constructed after waking? The answer came in 1975 in a sleep laboratory in England. A researcher named Keith Hearn had been working on the problem of how to establish objective evidence for lucid dreaming. The challenge was communication. How could a dreamer, lying still in a laboratory, signal to the outside world that they had become lucid without waking up? The solution was elegant in its simplicity. During REM sleep, the body is paralyzed, but the eyes are not. The rapid eye movements of REM sleep are real, measurable, recordable, and a dreamer who has become lucid can move their eyes deliberately in a pattern agreed upon before sleep. Hearn worked with a subject named Alan Worsley, who had a natural ability to achieve lucid dreams. The agreement was simple. When lucidity began, Worsley would move his eyes in a specific sequence: left, right, a signal from inside the dream to the instruments recording his sleep. And one night, it happened. The polysomnograph, the machine recording Worsley's brainwaves, his eye movements, his muscle activity, showed the unmistakable signature of REM sleep. And within that, REM sleep, the agreed eye movement signal appeared, deliberate, patterned, unmistakable. A message sent from inside a dream. It was the first objective, laboratory-confirmed evidence that lucid dreaming was real, that a sleeping person could be simultaneously in REM sleep and consciously aware of that fact. The finding was significant, though it took time to reach the wider scientific community. A few years later, Stephen LaBerge at Stanford University replicated the work independently, confirmed the results, and went further, developing systematic techniques for inducing lucid dreams, studying their neural correlates, and beginning to map what the brain looks like when it becomes aware of its own dreaming. What he and others found was that lucid dreaming is not simply ordinary REM sleep with a different subjective quality. Something changes in the brain when lucidity begins. The prefrontal cortex, the region that grows quieter during ordinary dreaming, the region responsible for self-reflection and logical awareness, shows increased activation during lucid dreams. The part of the mind that ordinarily steps back during sleep steps forward again, just enough to recognize the dream for what it is. The dreaming brain, briefly, becomes aware of itself. And that awareness, that quiet recognition from within, is something the brain is capable of, under the right conditions, on any given night. Gamma waves are a particular kind of electrical rhythm in the brain. They oscillate at around 40 cycles per second, fast, precise, associated with moments of conscious awareness and focused attention. During ordinary REM sleep, the frontal regions of the brain grow quiet. The prefrontal cortex steps back, and the dream proceeds without a witness. But during lucid dreaming, something shifts in those frontal regions. Gamma activity rises. The brain begins to hum at the frequency of awareness, and the dreamer, from somewhere inside the dream, begins to know. This is not a small distinction. The difference between an ordinary dream and a lucid one is not merely a matter of content, it is a difference in the brain's relationship to itself. In ordinary dreaming, The mind is immersed, fully inside the experience, with no distance from it. In lucid dreaming, a part of the mind steps slightly apart, watches, recognizes. The prefrontal cortex, reactivated, allows something that ordinary dreaming suppresses: self-reflection. The dreamer can ask, within the dream, what is this? Where am I? And arrive at an answer that is true. Researchers have found ways to encourage this shift from outside. Transcranial alternating current stimulation, a technique that applies gentle, oscillating electrical fields to the scalp, can be used to nudge the sleeping brain towards specific frequencies. In one study, applying stimulation at 40 Hz to participants during REM sleep produced a measurable increase in self-reported lucidity. The participants, woken shortly after, described dreams in which they had become aware they were dreaming. The brain, it seems, can be gently reminded of itself. This kind of research is still early. The findings are intriguing, but not yet fully replicated at scale. And the experience of lucidity, even when induced, is not something that can be guaranteed or precisely controlled. It arises, or it does not. When lucidity does arise, what follows varies enormously from person to person and from dream to dream. Some lucid dreamers find they can shape what happens, redirect the narrative, choose where to go, summon or dismiss elements of the dream landscape. Others find that the moment they try to exert control, the dream destabilizes, grows thin, and waking comes before they intended. The degree of control available in a lucid dream is not fixed. It depends on the depth of the REM state, on the individual's experience with lucid dreaming, on factors that are not yet well understood. Even practiced lucid dreamers report that some dreams yield to direction and others do not. The dream has its own momentum, its own gravity. There is something worth sitting with in that. The mind, even when it knows it is dreaming, does not always bend the dream to its will. The dreaming brain is not simply a screen waiting for instructions. It is generating something with its own texture and resistance. One area where researchers are paying particular attention is the relationship between lucid dreaming and nightmares. Nightmares, as described earlier in this night, are most intense in the final REM periods before waking. They carry emotional weight that can linger into the day. For some people, they recur. The same threatening scenario, the same sense of dread, returning night after night. The question researchers are exploring is whether lucidity might offer a way through. If a dreamer can recognize, in the middle of a nightmare, that what they are experiencing is a dream, not a real threat, not a real danger, the nightmare may lose some of its power. The dreamer might be able to alter its course, to introduce something unexpected into the scenario, or simply to choose to wake, calmly, rather than being pulled out by fear. This is not yet an established treatment. The research is ongoing, and the results so far are mixed, but the possibility is real enough to be worth pursuing. For people whose sleep is regularly disrupted by recurring nightmares, even a partial reduction in their frequency or intensity would be meaningful. For most people, lucid dreaming is not something that happens reliably or on demand. Some individuals experience lucid dreams naturally and frequently, several times a week, across their whole lives. Others have had one or two, perhaps in childhood, and never again. Many people have never experienced one at all, as far as they can recall. The variation is wide, and its causes are not fully understood. There may be differences in baseline prefrontal activity, in sleep architecture, and the tendency towards self-reflection that carries over from waking life into sleep. For those who wish to cultivate lucid dreaming, several techniques have been studied. Reality testing is one of the most commonly practiced. It involves building a habit, during waking hours, of pausing and genuinely questioning whether one is awake or dreaming. A common check is to read a piece of text, look away, and read it again. In waking life, the text stays the same. In a dream, it typically does not. Letters shift, words rearrange. The sentence that was there a moment ago becomes something different or dissolves entirely. The visual system in dreams is generative rather than receptive. It constructs rather than reads. And that construction is not stable under repeated attention. The idea behind reality testing is that if the habit of questioning is practiced often enough during the day, it may eventually carry over into sleep. The dreaming mind, encountering something strange, may pause and ask, and this time, the answer may be, this is a dream. Another approach is the wake back to bed method. It works by exploiting the natural architecture of sleep. REM periods grow longer as the night progresses. The final cycles before waking contain the most extended, most vivid REM sleep of the night. If a person wakes after 5 or 6 hours, stays awake for a short period, perhaps 20 or 30 minutes, and then returns to sleep, they re-enter sleep with elevated REM pressure. The brain, primed for REM, moves into it quickly and deeply. This late-night REM is where lucid dreams are most likely to occur. The conditions are favorable, the sleep is rich, the dreaming is vivid, and the brief period of wakefulness may have activated just enough self-awareness to carry a thread of it back into the dream. These techniques do not work for everyone, and even for those they do work for, they work inconsistently. Lucid dreaming remains, in some fundamental sense, something that happens to the dreamer as much as something the dreamer does. There is a quality to all of this that is worth resting in for a moment. The brain, during sleep, is not simply running a program. It is doing something that researchers can measure, can stimulate, can partially describe, and yet cannot fully account for. The gamma waves rise. The prefrontal cortex reactivates, and somewhere inside that activity, a person becomes aware that they are dreaming. What that awareness is, what it means for a brain to know itself from within a state it has generated, remains one of the quieter mysteries at the edge of neuroscience. Not a mystery that demands an answer tonight, just something to carry gently as the mind grows softer, as the boundary between this room and whatever comes next begins, slowly to blur, and so the night deepens. The late hours of sleep carry something the early hours do not. The REM periods grow longer as the night progresses. The first REM cycle of the night may last only a few minutes, but by the final cycle, just before the natural hour of waking, a single REM period can stretch close to an hour. This is why the wake back to bed method works when it does, by waking after 5 or 6 hours, staying briefly in the quiet, then returning to sleep. The sleeper steps directly into this late night abundance of REM. The brain, already primed, already carrying the accumulated pressure of a night's worth of sleep, moves quickly back into its most vivid dreaming state. Longer, richer, more likely to carry that strange quality of self-awareness that makes a dream feel inhabited rather than merely experienced. But then, morning comes, and almost all of it is gone. Dream recall, the ability to hold a dream in memory after waking, varies more between people than almost any other aspect of sleep. Some people wake each morning with clear, detailed impressions of where they have been. Others surface into the day with nothing, a faint emotional residue, perhaps, or the sense that something was happening just a moment ago, already dissolving at the edges. On average, a person remembers only a small fraction of the dreams they have each night, and the fraction is smaller than it feels. Most dreams leave no trace at all. The reason for this is not mysterious. Exactly. It is chemical, and it is structural, and it begins the moment the eyes open. Dream memories are encoded in a fragile form. They exist, briefly, in a kind of short-term holding, vivid enough to feel real, but not yet consolidated into the more durable networks that allow a memory to persist through a day. Waking disrupts that consolidation. The transition from sleep to wakefulness is not gentle on the dreaming mind. It is, in neurochemical terms, a kind of interruption. During REM sleep, acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter involved in attention and memory formation, is elevated. It helps sustain the dreaming state, keeps the brain's internal narrative running. But at the moment of waking, acetylcholine drops sharply, and with it, something of the dream's coherence seems to go as well. The images that felt so present just seconds ago begin to thin. The faces, the rooms, the strange logic of wherever the mind was, all of it starts to recede, like a tide pulling back from sand. At the same time, norepinephrine, which plays an important role in encoding memories during waking life, is suppressed during REM sleep. Its absence while dreaming may be part of why the brain struggles to hold on to what it has just experienced. The very chemistry that makes REM sleep what it is, the low norepinephrine, the high acetylcholine, the quiet prefrontal cortex, also makes it difficult to remember. There is something almost tender about this. The brain spends hours constructing these elaborate inner worlds, and then, by its own design, makes them nearly impossible to keep. Some people have found a way to hold a little more of it. A dream journal, kept beside the bed, written in immediately upon waking, before the mind has fully turned toward the day, can, over time, meaningfully improve recall, not because writing changes the chemistry of waking, but because it changes what the brain attends to in those first fragile moments. The act of reaching for the journal, of trying to find words for what was just experienced, seems to train something. The brain, over days and weeks of this practice, begins to attend more carefully to the transition itself, to catch the dream before it fully dissolves. People who are genuinely interested in their dreams tend to remember them more often. This is not simply a correlation. It suggests that attention itself plays a role, that the dreaming mind is not entirely beyond reach, if the waking mind is willing to turn toward it gently at the right moment. That moment is brief. The minutes just after waking are the only window. Once the day has begun, once the first thought of the morning has arrived, once the body has moved, once the eyes have found the light, the dream is usually gone. Not suppressed, not hidden somewhere retrievable, simply gone, the way a sound goes when it ends. Waking naturally, without an alarm, is associated with better dream recall than being pulled abruptly from sleep. This makes a quiet kind of sense. A natural waking tends to happen at the end of a sleep cycle, when the body is already moving toward consciousness on its own terms. The transition is gradual. There is a moment of half sleep, of soft awareness, in which the dream is still present and the waking mind has not yet fully arrived. An alarm clock offers no such moment. It interrupts the cycle at whatever point the clock has decided, regardless of where the brain happens to be. Often, that point is mid-REM, mid-dream. The sleeper is pulled from the deepest part of the experience, and the dream, which needed only a few more minutes to surface naturally, is cut away entirely. This is one of the quieter costs of the way many people wake, not just the abruptness of it, but the steady accumulation of dreams that never quite made it back. And yet, even with a journal, even with a gentle waking, even with the most careful attention, most of what happens in the dreaming mind each night will not be remembered. 6 years of dreaming across a lifetime, and only fragments survive. A recurring image here, an emotion that lingered into the morning there, the occasional dream so vivid it stays for days. The rest dissolves. And perhaps that is part of what dreaming is. Not a record to be kept, but a process to be undergone. The memory consolidation, the emotional processing, the quiet rehearsal of fears and faces and unresolved things. All of it may happen whether or not the dreamer ever knows it occurred. The benefit of the dream may not require the memory of it. The brain does its work in the dark, and the dreamer wakes, feeling somehow different, a little lighter, perhaps, or a little more settled, without knowing quite why. Whatever was processed in the night, whatever was replayed and reorganized and gently diffused, it has already been folded back into the fabric of the mind. The dream itself is gone, but something of what it did remains. So tonight, as the mind grows quieter and the body grows heavier, and the boundary between this room and wherever sleep leads begins to soften, there is nothing to hold on to, nothing to remember, nothing to carry forward. Only this, the slow, reliable arrival of sleep, the brain already beginning its long, unhurried work. the dreams already forming somewhere just ahead, in the dark that is not quite dark, already waiting. And in that space, just before sleep fully arrives, in that soft, dissolving threshold, something quiet happens in the brain. The hippocampus, which has been working all day to form new memories, begins to step back. Its activity dims at the transition from REM sleep to waking, not gradually, but in a kind of brief suppression, a momentary quieting. And in that window, dream memories cannot be properly encoded. They exist for a few seconds in a fragile and unanchored state, vivid, present, real, and then they simply go. Not forgotten in the usual sense. More like they were never quite held. This may be why the dream that felt so complete, so inhabited, so full of meaning, just moments ago, dissolves the instant the eyes open. The brain was not built to keep it, or perhaps it was built very precisely to let it go. People have wondered about dreams for as long as there have been people to wonder. For most of human history, dreams were understood as messages from gods, from the dead, from some deeper layer of the self that ordinary waking life could not reach. That instinct, that dreams mean something, did not disappear when science arrived. It found a new language. In 1899, Sigmund Freud published a book called The Interpretation of Dreams. It was, in his own estimation, the most important work he would ever produce. Freud proposed that dreams were not random, not meaningless, not simply the noise of a resting brain. They were, he believed, the royal road to the unconscious, a disguised expression of wishes and desires that the waking mind had pushed out of sight. He drew a distinction between what a dream appeared to be, its manifest content, the literal story, the images and events, and what it actually was, its latent content, the hidden meaning beneath. A dream about a house, in Freud's framework, might not be about a house at all. The surface was a kind of code, and the analyst's task was to decode it through free association, through careful attention to what the dreamer said, and avoided saying, through an interpretive framework that Freud himself had constructed. It was a compelling vision. And for much of the 20th century, it shaped how educated people thought about their dreams. Modern neuroscience has moved away from Freud's specific claims. Not dismissively, but carefully, and the evidence, as it has accumulated, has not been kind to the details. The idea that every dream symbol carries a fixed meaning, that water represents birth, that certain images reliably encode certain wishes, is not supported by research. Dreams are too variable, too personal, too shaped by individual experience to yield to a universal dictionary of symbols. The interpretive framework Freud built was elegant, but it was also unfalsifiable. It could explain anything, which meant it could prove nothing. And yet, Freud's broader intuition that dreams are connected to emotional life, that they are not merely random noise, has found a quieter kind of support in the decades since. Not in the form he imagined. But the connection between dreaming and feeling, between the sleeping mind and the unresolved textures of waking experience, that much, at least, the research has not dismissed. Carl Jung, who began as Freud's student and eventually parted from him, offered a different account. Where Freud saw dreams as expressions of personal repression, the individual's hidden wishes pressing upward through sleep, Jung saw something larger. He believed dreams carried messages from a collective unconscious, a layer of the mind shared by all human beings across all cultures and all of history. The recurring symbols in dreams, what Jung called archetypes, were not personal codes but universal ones. The Great Mother, the shadow, the journey, the threshold. These figures appeared, Jung believed, because they were woven into the structure of the human mind itself, not learned, but inherited. It was a beautiful idea. And like Freud's, it was difficult to test. Contemporary dream researchers tend to treat both men with a kind of respectful distance, historically important, philosophically rich, scientifically limited. They opened the question. They did not close it. In 1977, two researchers named Hobson and McCarley proposed something quite different. Their activation synthesis hypothesis began not with meaning, but with mechanism. During REM sleep, the brainstem generates bursts of random neural activity, signals that travel upward into the cortex without any particular content or intention. The cortex, receiving this chaotic input, does what the cortex always does. It tries to make sense of it. It reaches for patterns, for narrative, for coherence, and it constructs the most plausible story it can from the signals it has been given. That story, in this view, is the dream. The emotional charge, the strange logic, the sense of being somewhere real, all of it is the brain's pattern-seeking nature working on raw, unstructured noise. The dreaming mind is not a messenger. It is an interpreter, doing its best with imperfect material. Hobson and McCarley were not saying that dreams are meaningless, only that their meaning, if any, is constructed after the fact by a brain that cannot help but find stories in everything. It was a more mechanical account than Freud's or Jung's, and it was more amenable to testing. Though even this hypothesis has been refined and complicated in the years since, the brain, it turns out, is not simply receiving random noise during REM. The signals are shaped by memory, by emotion, by the particular history of the person sleeping. The raw material is not entirely random, and so the story the brain constructs is not entirely arbitrary either. What remains, across all of these accounts, Freud's hidden wishes, Jung's universal archetypes, Hobson and McCarley's narrative synthesis, is a shared acknowledgement. The dreaming brain is doing something. Something that involves memory and emotion and the construction of experience from within. Something that has occupied philosophers and scientists and ordinary people lying awake in the dark for as long as human beings have slept. And still, tonight, the question remains open. Not as a frustration, but as a kind of quiet company. The uncertainty itself is something to rest inside. Because whatever is happening as the mind grows heavier and the room grows softer and the thoughts begin to lose their edges, it is the same thing that has always happened. In every sleeping mind, in every era, in every quiet room where a person has closed their eyes and let the day go, the brain begins its work. The stories begin to form. And somewhere in the dark, without effort, without intention, without any need to understand, the dream arrives. The brain, after all, is a pattern-seeking organ. Even in sleep, even in the dark, it cannot stop looking for shape and meaning. Hobson and McCarley understood this. Their activation synthesis hypothesis described the dreaming brain not as a storyteller with something to say, but as an interpreter doing its best with imperfect material, random signals rising from the brainstem, fragments of sensation, memory, emotion, arriving without order or intention. And the brain, faithful to its nature, weaves them into something coherent, a corridor, a face, a sense of being late for something that cannot quite be named. The story is not sent from somewhere deeper. It is assembled, in the moment, from whatever is available. And yet, it feels like a story. That is the quiet wonder of it. Hobson later developed this thinking further into what he called the AIM model. It described dreaming not as a lesser or broken version of waking consciousness, but as a genuinely distinct state with its own internal logic, its own rules about what is possible, its own relationship to time and space and self. Not waking, not unconscious, something else entirely. A third kind of mind. More recent researchers have moved in a different direction. Rather than asking how dreams are generated, They have asked what dreams might be for, and several answers have emerged, each partial, each illuminating a different corner of the same dark room. One of them belongs to a Finnish cognitive neuroscientist named Antti Revonsuo. Revonsuo proposed what he called the threat simulation theory. The idea is this: dreaming evolved over deep evolutionary time as a rehearsal space, a place where the mind could practice responding to danger without the cost of actual danger. In the dream, the threat is real enough to activate fear, to quicken something in the body, to demand a response. But the consequences of failure are nothing. The predator does not catch you. The fall does not land. In this view, a nightmare is not a malfunction. It is the system working exactly as it was designed. A practice run. And there is something in the data that supports this quietly. When researchers examine the content of dreams across large samples, threatening events appear far more often than their frequency in waking life would predict. People dream of being chased, of falling, of being trapped, of facing something they cannot escape, at rates that suggest the dreaming brain has a preference for difficulty, as though it is drawn again and again to the scenarios that most need rehearsing. This does not mean every threatening dream serves a clear purpose. The theory has its critics, and the evidence is suggestive rather than conclusive. But it offers a way of holding the darker dreams with a little more gentleness, not as intrusions, but as preparation. Others have extended this idea outward from physical threat to social complexity. The social simulation theory suggests that dreams do not only rehearse danger, they rehearse people. The difficult conversation, the misunderstanding, the reunion, the loss. Dreams are populated, almost always, by other human beings. Faces known and half known, relationships tangled and unresolved, social situations that carry weight without always carrying clarity. And the dynamics within those dream encounters often mirror something real: an anxiety about belonging, a longing for connection, a fear of being seen or of being invisible. The dreaming brain, in this view, is practicing the most complex thing a human being does, which is not surviving a predator, but navigating other people. Both theories point toward the same quiet conclusion: that dreaming is not idle. That even the strain, even the frightening, even the dreams that dissolve before they can be examined, they may all be part of something the mind is doing on its own behalf. In the hours when the world has gone quiet and there is nothing left to attend to but the work inside. And yet, no single theory has settled the question. Threat simulation, social rehearsal, memory integration, emotional regulation, activation synthesis, each captures something. Each leaves something out. The researchers who study dreams most carefully are also, often, the most honest about how much remains unknown. The question of why we dream is genuinely open. Not open in the way that suggests an answer is almost within reach, but open in the older sense, a question that has been carried for a very long time, by very careful people, and has not yet resolved into certainty. This is worth holding quietly, because the experience that is beginning now, as the breath slows and the room recedes, and the thoughts begin to soften at their edges, that experience is not yet fully understood. The mind drifting towards sleep tonight is doing something that science can describe in parts, can measure in fragments, can theorize about with great care and intelligence, and still cannot fully explain. There is something restful in that, if it is allowed to be. The mystery is not a problem to be solved before sleep is permitted. It is simply the condition of being a dreaming creature, which is what every person who has ever closed their eyes has been. And the dreaming mind is not only a human mind. The evidence for this has grown steadily across decades of careful observation, and it comes from many directions at once. Rats, for instance. When a rat spends time exploring a new environment, running a maze, learning the shape of an unfamiliar space, something is recorded in the hippocampus. The sequence of places visited, the turns taken, the spatial logic of the journey. And then, when the rat sleeps, that sequence replays. The same neurons that fired as the rat move through the maze fire again, in the same order, during sleep. The journey is being run again, in the dark, in miniature. At a compressed timescale, a path that took minutes to walk is replayed in seconds, as though the sleeping brain is reviewing what it learned, passing it from one kind of storage to another, making sure it is kept. This hippocampal replay in rats is one of the clearest pieces of evidence that sleep serves memory consolidation across species, that the process happening in a human brain tonight, the quiet reorganization of the day's experience, is not uniquely human. It is ancient. It is shared. Whether the rat experiences anything during this replay, whether there is something it is like to be a rat running a remembered maze in sleep, is a question that cannot yet be answered. But the neural activity is there, the pattern is there, the brain in sleep, returning to what it learned. And so the dreaming mind extends further than any single species. It reaches back through evolutionary time, into forms of life very different from this one, into nervous systems shaped by entirely different pressures and environments, and finds, in all of them, the same quiet work being done in the dark. Memory being held, experience being kept, the day being carried forward into whatever comes next. Birds sleep too. And in their sleep, something remarkable happens. In the brains of songbirds, small creatures whose entire identity is bound up in the songs they sing, the neural circuits responsible for song production become active during REM sleep. Not randomly, not as noise, but in patterns that mirror the songs themselves. A zebra finch learning a new song will practice it during the day, imperfectly, haltingly, the way any young creature learns something difficult. And then, in sleep, the brain returns to that song. The same circuits fire, the same sequences unfold, quietly, internally, without a single note being produced. And the next morning, the bird sings better. This has been measured. It is not a metaphor. Sleep, for a zebra finch, is part of learning, as essential as the practice itself. There is something quietly moving about that. A small bird, somewhere in the dark, rehearsing its song in silence. Cats carry a different kind of evidence. When researchers lesioned the specific brainstem circuit responsible for REM muscle atonia, the mechanism that keeps the sleeping body still, something unexpected happened. The cats, deeply asleep by every measure, began to move. They would stand, crouch, stalk, pounce at things that were not there. The behavior was unmistakable. These were hunting movements, precise, coordinated, purposeful, directed at prey that existed only inside the sleeping brain. Whether a cat experiences something during this, whether there is a felt quality to the hunt, a sense of pursuit, a world that seems real, cannot be said with certainty. But the motor programs are running. The brain is generating the full sequence of hunting behavior, held in place only by a small circuit in the brainstem that, in ordinary sleep, keeps the body from following where the mind is gone. Remove that circuit, and the body follows. It is one of the most direct windows science has into what an animal's sleeping brain might be doing. And what it suggests is that the cat, in sleep, is somewhere else entirely. Dolphins present a different kind of mystery. They cannot afford to be unconscious. They breathe air, and they live in water, and so sleep, for a dolphin, must be something other than what it is for a creature that can simply lie down and close its eyes. The solution evolution found is extraordinary. Dolphins, and some whales, sleep with one hemisphere of the brain at a time. One half rests, cycling through slow wave sleep, while the other half remains awake, alert enough to swim, to surface, to breathe, to watch for danger. Then the hemispheres switch. This state is called unihemispheric slow wave sleep, and it means that a dolphin is never fully asleep in the way a human is, never fully surrendered to unconsciousness, always, in some sense, present. What this means for dreaming is genuinely unknown. REM sleep, as it occurs in humans, requires a kind of whole brain engagement. The visual cortex, the limbic system, the memory centers, all active together. Whether a brain divided against itself in this way can generate anything like a dream is a question that has not been answered. Perhaps dolphins do not dream in any recognizable sense. Perhaps they experience something else entirely, something for which there is no human word, because no human has ever had a brain that rests in halves. And then there are octopuses. An octopus is about as distant from a human being as an animal can be while still having a nervous system. Its brain is distributed. Much of its intelligence lives in its arms, which can act semi-independently. It evolved separately from vertebrates for hundreds of millions of years. And yet, during sleep, an octopus changes color. Rapidly, dynamically, patterns rippling across the skin in waves, pale, then dark, then mottled, then pale again. The same chromatophores that an octopus uses to camouflage itself while awake, now firing in sequences that seem to have no external cause. This has been observed and recorded. It suggests something REM-like is occurring, some internal state-generating activity that, in a waking octopus, would produce a visual display. If an octopus dreams, the dream may be written on its skin. A shifting, silent light show, visible to anyone watching, the contents of an octopus mind, played out in color and pattern on the surface of its own body. It is one of the strangest images in all of sleep science, and one of the most quietly beautiful. All of this, the rat replaying its maze, the finch rehearsing its song, the cat stalking invisible prey, the dolphin resting in halves, the octopus dreaming in color, points towards something that extends far beyond any single species or any single night. Sleep, and whatever happens within it, is not an accident of human biology. It is ancient. It is widespread. It appears, in some form, wherever there are nervous systems complex enough to need it. And the question of what it is, what is actually happening, what is being experienced, whether experience is even the right word, remains open across all of them. Now, there is a set of brain regions in the human mind that becomes active in a particular way when the mind is not focused on anything external, when there is no task, no problem, no object of attention demanding engagement, when the mind is simply left to itself. These regions are called the default mode network. They are associated with mind wandering, with self-reflection, with the quiet construction of mental narratives, the stories the mind tells about itself, about others, about what has happened and what might happen next. When you are lying still, not quite thinking about anything in particular, and your mind begins to drift, following a thread of memory, or imagining a conversation, or simply moving through images without direction, the default mode network is what is doing that drifting. It is the brain's resting voice, the hum beneath the silence. And when researchers began mapping the brain regions active during dreaming, they found something that gave them pause. The overlap was substantial. The regions that become active when the waking mind wanders, when it turns inward, loses its grip on the external world, begins to generate its own content, are largely the same regions that become active during dreaming. This has led some researchers to suggest that dreaming is not a separate, exotic state, but something closer to the mind's natural tendency, finally unconstrained. During waking life, the default mode network is held in check. External demands pull attention outward. The prefrontal cortex monitors and redirects. The world keeps interrupting. But in sleep, those interruptions fall away. The external world goes quiet. The prefrontal cortex dims, and the default mode network, no longer held back, no longer redirected, runs freely. Generating narrative, generating imagery, generating the felt sense of being somewhere, of something happening, of a world that is present and real. In this view, dreaming is not something the brain does despite being asleep. It is something the brain has always been inclined toward, and sleep is simply the condition in which it is finally free to do it. The mind, left to itself, tells stories. It always has. And tonight, as the last threads of waking attention loosen, as the external world recedes and the default mode network begins its quiet, unconstrained work, that is what is beginning now. Somewhere between this moment and morning, the mind will go somewhere. It will construct a world. And for a while, that world will be the only one there is. There is a thread that runs through all of it. Through the daydream you had this afternoon, when your attention drifted from whatever you were doing and went somewhere else entirely. Through the quiet reverie of a long journey, when the mind loosened and began to wander. Through the half-formed images that sometimes visit the edge of sleep. The same network is present in all of them. The default mode network does not switch off when you stop dreaming and start waking. It simply changes its conditions. In waking life, it surfaces during daydreams, those unguarded moments when attention slips its leash and the mind begins, quietly, to tell itself something. In sleep, it runs without interruption, but the underlying tendency is the same regions, the same inclination toward narrative and imagery, and the felt sense of being somewhere. Dreaming and daydreaming may not be two different things. They may be two expressions of one. And threading through both, through memory and navigation and the quiet architecture of creative thought, is a particular kind of brainwave. Theta waves, slow, rhythmic oscillations that arise in the hippocampus. They are present during REM sleep. They are present when the mind is finding its way through space, building a map of where it is and where it has been. They are present during moments of insight, when something that was separate suddenly connects. The hippocampus, it seems, speaks in theta, whether it is sleeping or thinking. And what it is doing, in both cases, is something like the same thing, moving through a landscape, finding the shape of things, placing one memory in relation to another. The sleeping brain is not resting. This is perhaps the most important thing to understand about what is happening right now, as the body grows still and the breath slows and the world outside recedes. The brain is working. Not in the way it works during a difficult conversation or a complicated task, not with that effortful, directed quality, but working nonetheless, coordinating, consolidating, reorganizing the day's experience into something more durable, more integrated, more fully its own. During non-REM sleep, in the lighter stages before the deep slow wave descent, something called sleep spindles appear. Brief bursts of oscillatory activity, a sudden quickening in the electrical rhythm of the brain, lasting perhaps half a second, then gone. They occur dozens of times each hour. Most people are entirely unaware of them, but they are not incidental. Sleep spindles are associated with the transfer of memories, the movement of newly formed experience from the hippocampus, where it was first recorded, toward the broader cortical networks where it will be stored for the long term. People who generate more sleep spindles tend to perform better on memory tasks the following day, not because they slept longer, but because their sleeping brains were more actively engaged in this quiet, invisible work. Alongside the spindles, another wave appears, the K complex, a large, slow deflection in the brain's electrical signal, sudden, pronounced, and then subsiding. K complexes are thought to serve a protective function. They may help suppress arousal, dampen the brain's response to minor disturbances, a sound from outside, a shift in the room that might otherwise pull the sleeper toward waking. In this way, the sleeping brain tends to itself. It generates the conditions for its own continuity. It keeps the world at a gentle distance while the deeper work proceeds. Deeper still, in slow wave sleep, something else is happening. The brain is being cleaned. There is a system, only described in detail relatively recently, called the glymphatic system, a network of channels surrounding the brain's blood vessels, through which cerebrospinal fluid can flow. During waking life, this flow is limited, but during deep sleep, the cells of the brain appear to shrink slightly, opening the spaces between them. and cerebrospinal fluid moves more freely through the tissue. It flushes through, carrying with it the metabolic waste that accumulates during a day of thinking and perceiving and remembering. Proteins, byproducts, the residue of neural activity. Among them, a protein called amyloid beta. Amyloid beta is a protein that, when it accumulates in excess, forms the plaques found in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. During sleep, the lymphatic system clears it. During waking, it builds. A single night without sleep produces a measurable increase in amyloid beta in the human brain. Not a theoretical increase, a measurable one. And chronic sleep deprivation, sustained over months and years, is associated with greater accumulation over time. This does not mean that poor sleep causes Alzheimer's disease. The relationship is more complex than that, and research is ongoing, but it has given the study of sleep a new kind of weight. Sleep is not merely a matter of feeling rested. It is, as far as current evidence suggests, part of how the brain maintains itself across a lifetime. The night is not empty time. It is maintenance. It is consolidation. It is the slow, careful work of a system that knows, without being told, what it needs. And somewhere in the transition into all of this, in the passage from waking to sleeping, there is a moment that many people know. A sudden jolt, a sensation of falling, or of missing a step, the body twitching sharply just as sleep begins to arrive. The hypnic jerk. It is entirely normal. It happens to most people, at least occasionally, and it tends to occur at the threshold, that narrow, uncertain passage between wakefulness and sleep, when muscle tone is beginning to drop and the brain is beginning to let go. Why it happens is not fully settled. One hypothesis, offered with appropriate uncertainty, is that it may be an evolutionary remnant, a reflex inherited from ancestors who slept in trees, for whom a sudden loss of muscle tone carried real risk. The body, sensing the relaxation of sleep, briefly startles itself awake to check. Whether or not that account is correct, the experience itself is harmless, a small interruption at the threshold, and then, usually, the threshold passes. The body settles. The breath deepens. The muscle tone that the hypnic jerk briefly reclaimed begins, again, to release. All of this is happening now, or will be soon. The spindles will come, quiet and invisible, moving the day's experience towards somewhere more permanent. The slow waves will arrive, and with them the lymphatic tide, moving through the spaces of the brain in the dark. The K-complexes will rise and fall, keeping the world gently at bay. And somewhere in the later hours, the REM periods will lengthen. The default mode network will run freely. The hippocampus will speak in theta. The dreaming mind will go somewhere. None of this requires anything from you. It is already underway, has been underway since the first moment of sleep, proceeding without instruction, without effort, without awareness. The brain knows what to do in the dark. It is always known, and tonight, as it has every night of your life, it is doing it, quietly, carefully, in the stillness of this room, while you rest. There is one more thing worth knowing about the threshold you are crossing tonight. The hypnic jerk, that sudden falling sensation, that brief muscular startle, may carry within it a very old memory. One hypothesis, quiet and speculative, suggests it is a remnant of something ancient, a reflex, inherited from ancestors who slept in trees, for whom the relaxation of muscle tone at sleep onset carried a real risk of falling. The body, sensing the sudden loosening, would catch itself. A small, automatic rescue. Whether that is true cannot be said with certainty, but there is something worth sitting with in the idea that even now, in a bed, in a room, in a world of walls and floors, the body may still be practicing a very old caution, still remembering, in its wordless way, a time when sleep required balance. And then the reflex passes. and the threshold continues. Sometimes, just before sleep fully arrives, something else appears. Not a dream, not yet, but a fragment of one. A face, briefly and completely present. A landscape seen from above. A voice saying something that almost makes sense. A sense of moving through a space that has no name. These are called hypnagogic hallucinations. They occur at the edge of sleep, before the architecture of REM has assembled itself, before the dreaming mind has properly begun. They are distinct from dreams in the way that a single note is distinct from a melody. Brief, unconnected, vivid in a way that is hard to explain. Some people experience them rarely. Others find the threshold richly populated, a small gallery of images that appears and dissolves as consciousness loosens its grip. A color, a pattern, a fragment of a sentence spoken by no one. The boundary between waking and sleeping is not a line. It is a region, gradual, sometimes irregular, sometimes crossed and recrossed before the crossing finally holds. The brain does not switch off cleanly. It dims and brightens slightly and dims again. Consciousness does not depart all at once, but retreats in stages, leaving certain rooms lit longer than others. This is worth knowing because it means that wherever you are right now, however close or far from sleep, you are already somewhere in that region, already in the gradual country between one state and another, already moving, even if the movement is imperceptible. There is no effort required. The transition is happening on its own terms, in its own time. Sleep deprivation, when it becomes severe, reveals how essential this transition is. In people who have gone without sleep for long enough, the brain begins to take sleep in small, stolen pieces. Brief episodes, lasting only a few seconds, in which the brain enters a sleep-like state even as the eyes remain open. These are called microsleeps, and the person experiencing them is often entirely unaware that they have occurred. For a few seconds, the lights go out, and then they return, and the world appears continuous, as though nothing happened. This is one of the reasons that driving while severely sleep-deprived carries such serious risk. The road ahead may look uninterrupted to the driver, but the brain may have been briefly, completely absent. A few seconds of microsleep at speed covers a distance that cannot be recovered. The brain, when it needs sleep, will find a way to take it, even in the middle of wakefulness, even without permission. This is not a flaw. It is the depth of the need. In 1964, a 17-year-old named Randy Gardner decided to stay awake for as long as he could. He managed 11 days and 25 minutes, a record for voluntary sleep deprivation that still stands, and that researchers would not attempt to replicate today. By the end, Gardner was experiencing hallucinations, paranoia, severe difficulty with memory and concentration. His cognitive world had begun to fragment in ways that were measurable and distressing. The brain, denied what it needed, had begun to come apart at its edges. And then he slept. He slept for 14 hours, and when he woke, he had recovered, without apparent lasting harm, as far as could be determined. The brain, given the chance, had repaired what it could. His case is often cited as evidence that sleep deprivation, even extreme sleep deprivation, is survivable with recovery sleep. But it is also a portrait of what the absence of sleep does to a mind. The hallucinations, the paranoia, the slow dissolution of clear thought, these are not incidental. They are the brain signaling, in the only language available to it, that something fundamental is being withheld. There is a condition, rare and devastating, that makes the necessity of sleep impossible to ignore. It is called fatal familial insomnia. It is caused by a misfolded protein, a prion, that progressively damages a small, deep structure at the center of the brain called the thalamus. The thalamus acts as a kind of gatekeeper, filtering the constant stream of sensory information and helping to initiate and maintain sleep. When it is damaged, the gating fails. The person cannot sleep, not from anxiety, not from circumstance, But because the biological mechanism that produces sleep has been destroyed, they enter a state of exhausted wakefulness from which there is no return. The body and mind, denied the restoration that only sleep provides, decline. And eventually, the condition is fatal. It is an extraordinarily rare disease. Most people will never encounter it, and there is no reason to carry it as a fear. But it stands as a kind of testament, a quiet, terrible proof of what sleep is. Not a pause in life, not a convenience, not something the body does when nothing more important is happening. Sleep is a necessity as fundamental as water, as air. The brain requires it not merely to function well, but to function at all, to remain coherent, to remain itself. All of this, the hypnic jerk, the hypnagogic images, the micro-sleeps, the slow catastrophe of deprivation, points toward the same quiet truth. The sleeping brain is not resting in any simple sense. It is working, maintaining, restoring something that cannot be maintained or restored any other way. And tonight, without effort, without awareness, that work is already underway. The threshold you are crossing is one you have crossed thousands of times before. The body knows the way. The brain knows what to do in the dark. The hypnagogic images, if they come, will come and go like weather, brief and harmless and already dissolving. The transition will continue at its own pace, gradual, irregular, unhurried. And somewhere in the quiet hours ahead, the dreaming mind will go where it goes, into whatever world it builds tonight, from whatever materials the day has left behind. You do not need to know where that is. You only need to let the threshold pass. There is a small structure deep inside the brain, roughly the size and shape of a walnut, called the thalamus. It sits near the center of everything, a quiet relay station through which almost all sensory information must pass before reaching the cortex. Sound, touch, light, pressure, all of it flows through the thalamus first. And when sleep begins, the thalamus does something remarkable. It begins to close. Not all at once. Gradually, it reduces the flow of incoming signals, dims the sensory world, draws a curtain between the sleeping brain and everything outside. This is part of how sleep becomes possible at all. The thalamus is, in a sense, the gatekeeper, the structure that decides, moment by moment, how much of the outside world the brain needs to receive. When it is working, you do not notice it. The world simply grows quieter. The sounds of the room recede. The weight of the body softens into the surface beneath it. But there is a rare and devastating condition in which the thalamus is slowly destroyed. It is called fatal familial insomnia. A misfolded protein, a prion, accumulates in the thalamic tissue and damages it, progressively, irreversibly. The gatekeeper fails. The curtain cannot be drawn. Those who carry this condition find that sleep becomes unreachable. Not difficult, unreachable. The body exhausts itself in the attempt and cannot arrive. What follows is a slow unraveling, hallucinations, confusion, a wakefulness that offers no rest and accepts no end. It is a condition that exists in only a small number of families in the world, and it is mentioned here not to disturb, but because it illuminates something important. It shows, with terrible clarity, that sleep is not optional, not a convenience the body can do without when circumstances require. It is as necessary as anything the body does, as necessary as the beating of the heart. The thalamus, when it fails, takes sleep with it, and without sleep, nothing else holds. This quiet, walnut-shaped structure, working without your awareness every night of your life, is part of what makes everything else possible. And tonight, it is doing its work. The curtain is drawing closed. Across everything that has been described tonight, the cycling stages, the memory replay, the emotional processing, the dreaming animals, the paralyzed body, the lucid mind aware of its own dreaming. something remains that none of it fully explains. The science accounts for the mechanism, the neural correlates, the oscillations and the neurotransmitters, and the regions that light up and go dark. But it does not account for the experience itself, the feeling of being somewhere, the sense within a dream that the world around you is real, that the room has walls, that the light is falling in a particular way, that the person standing across from you is present and known. None of that is coming from outside. There is no room. There is no light. There is no person. The brain has constructed all of it from within using only its own activity. No sensory input, no external anchor, no shared reality that anyone else can enter or confirm. And yet, it feels inhabited. This is not a small thing. The question of why the brain generates experience at all, why there is something it is like to be a dreaming mind or a waking one, is considered by many philosophers and scientists to be the hardest problem in all of human inquiry. It has a name, the hard problem of consciousness, and it applies as fully to the dreaming mind as to the waking one, perhaps more so. Because in waking life, there is at least a world outside to point to. Sensory signals arriving, neurons responding, perception arising from contact with something real. But in sleep, the world is entirely self-generated. The brain is the author and the audience simultaneously. It writes the scene and then inhabits it, without knowing it has written anything at all. How does that happen? No one knows. Not fully. Not yet. There are theories, as there are theories for everything in this territory. The activation synthesis account, which says the dreaming brain is simply making narrative sense of random signals. The default mode network account, which sees dreaming as unconstrained self-referential thought. The memory integration account, which treats the dream as a side effect of consolidation. Each of these captures something. None of them captures the experience. The redness of a color seen in a dream. The specific quality of fear when something pursues you through a corridor that keeps extending. The strange recognition of a face that belongs to no one you have ever met. These are not explained by oscillation frequencies or hippocampal replay. They are the texture of consciousness itself, and that texture remains, as far as science can tell, genuinely mysterious. This uncertainty is not a failure. It is simply where the knowledge ends. For now, at the edge of something the instruments have not yet learned to measure. And so here is where the night arrives. Not at an answer, but at the thing itself. Right now, in this room, in this quiet, the process is underway. The thalamus drawing its curtain, the slow waves moving through the cortex, the hippocampus beginning its quiet work of sorting and replaying. And somewhere in the hours ahead, the dreaming will begin. It has begun every night of your life, thousands of times, in rooms you no longer remember, in years that feel distant now. The brain has always known how to do this. It does not need instruction. It does not need permission. It will build a world tonight from whatever the day has left behind. Fragments of faces, the texture of a sound, half heard, something unresolved, something soft, something that has no name in waking language. That world will feel real. It will feel present. And then, at some point before morning, it will dissolve quietly, without announcement, the way a thought dissolves when attention moves elsewhere. You will not notice the moment it goes. Whatever dreaming is, it is happening now, in this room, in this quiet, as it has always happened. The brain, in the dark, building something from nothing, and then letting it go.